say 5, and we only have an hour and a half for this. So I think we perhaps better kick off. Um, I will just say brief few words about the context to make sure you're in the right meeting. We're here for transcripts too. We're talking about peer support for TGD NB folk nationwide and online today. So we have representatives from a number of different orgs and grassroots support networks to speak. We've had a last minute cancellation from Alice from Transfolk of WA, who's attending to some urgent family business tonight. But in their place, we're very lucky to have Arden Cassie coming to us from Hunter Gender Alliance. So I am going to throw straight away to ask our excellent. Now I've lost you on the screen. As soon as I lose you on the screen, I start to worry that you're not there, but of course you are. Lisa Taylor, to actually acknowledge the lands that we're all coming to one another from tonight.
Oh, hello, good evening, and thanks everyone for joining. My name is Lisa Taylor, and I'm coming from beautiful Bundjalung country this evening in the Northern Rivers. I just want to give a big shout out to any Aboriginal people that might be joining us tonight, and any Aboriginal elders, as well as any sister girls or brother boys, and just a general shout out to, everyone. And just remind everyone, to at the moment with all the stuff going on about Black Lives Matter, and not just all the racism that's coming out from the lockdowns, and just to call it out. If you're seeing it, call it out, and let's stamp it and put a stop to it. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Lisa. I'm coming to you from Boonwurrung and Wiradjuri country on the Kulin Nations in Naarm, land that was never ceded. And I think that I'm particularly privileged to be living very close to a creek, which was meeting grounds for different mob back in the day. And it really is one of the places that I feel most calm and connected with the world around us, just with some green leaves, running water, and beautiful bird life. So I'm very lucky actually to be locked down with that within my 5-kilometre radius. Can I invite our other guest presenters to acknowledge their country? Ted, would you like to go first? Thank you.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name's Teddy Cook, and I'd like to acknowledge that where I'm sitting at the moment is on Gadigal land, one of the 29 clans of the Eora Nation, otherwise known as Sydney. I'd like to acknowledge all elders, past, present, and emerging, and any and every Aboriginal person in this room today, and a particular shout out to any sister girls and brother boys that join us. Always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Thank you.
Thank you, Teddy. AJ, where are you coming to us from?
I'm coming from the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I would also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we're gathered in a digital hub space. And I'd like to pay my respects to the elders, both past, present and emerging. And I'd like to also extend that respect to all brother boys and sister girls and any other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people that are on our digital hub today. And we're so grateful to be given this meeting place.
Thanks, AJ. Arden.
Hi, I'm coming to you today. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that I'm on, of the Awabakal peoples. I acknowledge elders past, present and emerging, and as well as any brother boys or sister girls who are here with us today. And I'd also like to acknowledge that this sovereignty of this land was never ceded.
Thank you. So there's some big questions that we'd like to kind of interrogate around what is peer support? How has it changed in the COVID context? Are there any particular obstacles or opportunities that are available to us in operating in primarily online spaces, and how we're going to translate that back to face-to-face. I'm really interested in thinking through how we might, those of us coming from state-based organisation contexts, be able to step beyond our borders and support one another in a national landscape. And the context in Victoria is, both harrowing at the moment and very exciting, because we do have a supportive government, and I'll be speaking a little bit later about the peer support program that I've been able to be part of as an employee of both Transgender Victoria and Trans Harbour Health. But I think we've allowed 10 minutes or so for each speaker to talk a little bit about how they're doing peer support, how they define peer support, perhaps mention a couple of projects that have been particularly successful, or spectacular fails is also welcome. I think we can learn a lot from what hasn't worked. And then we've got 5 minutes after each speaker for audience Q&A, and we hope to come together for about 15 minutes at the end to have a general discussion between panellists about some of the strategies that have really helped us in adapting to primarily online times and the COVID context. So with all that said, I would like to welcome Teddy Cook, who wears many hats, and I think you're best placed to actually introduce yourself, Teddy. Thank you very much.
Hi everybody, I'm Teddy. Do I need to do more than that? It's really lovely to see you all. I'm a trans person, just like you all are, and it's really great to be here. Should I be a bit more specific? I'll do
Can
the
you tell
thing.
us a little bit about the context that you're coming to?
Oh, sorry, I'm so obstinate. So I'm ACON's manager of trans and gender diverse health equity. I'm also vice president of the Australian Professional Association for Trans Health, otherwise known as OzPath. And I'm an adjunct lecturer for the Kirby Institute Sexual Health program at the University of New South Wales.
Thank you, Teddy. And AJ?
I'm AJ Brown, they, them. I'm a proud non-binary transmasculine person who's passionate about creating community, raising visibility and awareness for trans and gender diverse people. I'm president of Trans Pride Australia, social support and advocacy non-for-profit, with a vision to see trans and gender diverse people as equal citizens of the world.
That seems a reasonable ask, doesn't it?
It should be.
Arden, can I invite you to introduce yourself and where you're coming from in terms of Hunter Gender Alliance?
Sure. So, hi, my name is Arden. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a trans femme person from the Newcastle area. I work as the treasurer for Hunter Gender Alliance, and our primary goal, we work with allied health professionals as well as trans and gender diverse peoples to provide support, networks, and information, sort of to connect everybody into the picture together, but specifically with a view to providing support for the people in our local area.
Thank you. And Lisa, tell us a little bit about your world.
Hi, I'm Lisa Taylor. I'm a sister girl from Warramai country in Port Stephens. I have been advocating for sister girls and brother boys for approximately 20 years, and been on a number of boards and committees over them years. I am married to a trans person, and for 20 years, or not married for 20 years, but yeah, about 10 years. And but we've been together for 20 years. And I the founder and admin of Sister Girls and Brother Boys Australia, and we're about 2,000 members in that group, and we've been doing that for about 10 years.
Thank you. We've got so many questions about moderating a group of that size and keeping it all wheels turning and primarily happy conversations. I'm still very distracted because I'm trying to adjust settings on Eventbrite to let more people in. While I'm doing that, Teddy, could you give us your overview of peer support in,
Mm.
I guess, primarily Sydney. But yeah, tell us about the stretch and yeah, some
Sure.
of the
Do
possibilities.
do your technical thing, and
Thank
I'll
you.
have one of these to the audience and see how we go. I also just wanted to shout out to those people who are in Victoria in particular, and just to say from where I sit, am sending so much solidarity and love to you all. And if we can avoid any trans person in hospital, the better. And we're all together in this. So it's really lovely that this forum is happening now. Um, so Sun in particular asked me to talk a little bit about TransHub, which is a project that I led and lead at ACON, and I guess one of the questions that it's sort of important to think about is how it is that community play a role in shaping the content that we talk about, and the role of community in particularly for such a diverse and incredible bunch of people, what that looks like when we transfer all of the knowledge that we have into something that can be accessible, make sense, can be supported by quite a large organization, and what that looks like at the other end. From a New South Wales perspective, and from my perspective, the way that we think about, the way that kind of ACON thinks about peer support, it really is that it is at the core of everything that we do and everything that we have done since the explosion of the AIDS epidemic when we were established in the mid-80s. And the voice of people with lived experience and the way that we can speak to each other when we have the authority to do so makes a tremendous difference to the lived experience of our community, and it makes sense. Uh, there was a very strong community-led response to HIV, and as a result of that, in Australia, the level of HIV in this country is much smaller than that of other countries who their HIV response was based on what the government suggested. And that didn't happen here because there was a really strong relationship between government, community, and research, and medicine. And that's something that I think has led the way in terms of thinking about how people who are affected by something need to participate in the response to it. So we see this play out across mental health. We see this play out in a number of different sorts of spaces. And increasingly, we're seeing that in this space where we recognize and center and elevate and celebrate really that trans people are experts about our own experience, whether we are 2 or whether we are 100. And that it is essential that we have a strong collaborative voice around the table that brings us together. And that's not just because it's good to do, but actually it's really good for our health. Peer support. And, when we talk about, I find it a little bit tricky actually talking about peer support. And I haven't mentioned this to you at all, Son, yet. So, just act surprised because you will be. I don't really like the term peer support. It feels like a support group to me. And that's not what I don't think that that's what we're about. What I'm about, and I think what many of us are about, is about community building and about mutual aid, where we come together and use the incredible skills that we have to make a difference in each other's lives. And that's not sitting around and having a support group together. And that is incredibly important, though, I must say, very important. But that's not the only thing that is peer support. One of the questions I was asked by Sun was about how TransHub shapes access to peer support. And actually, I think that probably more powerfully for something like TransHub that has exploded in a way that we knew that it was important. And I'd like to share that it was me and one other a trans woman working 2 days a week for me, and another trans femme doing the background technical stuff, and another trans masc doing the design stuff. And that was it. And we did that over 9 months, and I had hair at the beginning. I definitely had hair at the beginning. That's no lie. But I think what TransHub, the important thing I think about that is that uh, it's more so about how peers shaped TransHub, not necessarily how TransHub shapes peers. Uh, One of the really powerful things about this platform that we have in New South Wales at the moment is that it has a very strong, very clear, very collaborative trans voice. It isn't about gender dysphoria. It isn't about distress or pain or agony or misery or rejection. It's about trans liberation. It's about positioning our community in a way where we recognise that having access to information makes a tremendous difference to our health and well-being. When our community connects, we know that that is a protective factor, and a protective factor for our mental health. And it protects us from self-harm when we are connected to a community of other people just like us. And that's really important. Have I answered any of your questions, son? Am I doing anything remarkably like you wanted me to do? Happy
No,
to be
I think it's
directed.
really important to actually interrogate what peer support is, because often it's the stuff that happens around other activities, and it can just be hanging out together. So when does hanging out together kind of end and formal peer support begin? And what kind of organisational resources do we need to um, make it easier to be good peers?
Yeah, I think one of the things that brings us together as a movement, and this is shared across the LGBTQ movement as well, is that we have similar experiences of discrimination and stigma. We come together because we're not treated very well and we need to do something about that. And we do that together because we do that together. When we do that together, it always ends up being better rather than, say, the cis people wanting to do that for us. Never works that well. Um, and, I think I actually feel a little bit more fluid about the point when mates become peers or when friends become, or chats or discussions become formal peer support. I actually wonder if it's got more to do with this concept that we call cultures of care, where we look after each other and we have a system in place that ensures that we can stay protected, which I have to say I don't think we have now. I don't think we have that at the moment. I don't think we have that to a point where people who are community leaders, given the incredible burden of poor mental health, of uh, behaviours that self-harming behaviours or suicidality, that protect people who are holding space or uh, navigating with someone or referring someone elsewhere, or kind of having that conversation where someone is coming to you with vulnerability and you're responding with your own truth and your own experience, and in a way that doesn't re-traumatize anyone. I don't know if we're doing that well. I don't know if I'm doing that well in that regard. I certainly don't know if I'm doing that well right now in the middle of a global pandemic. The whole way that we thought about kind of how we connect with peers has completely changed. Borders are gone. Great, excellent. I am thrilled that I'm in a grid with such incredible leaders from our community. But I do think that that we do need to do some work about um, equipping people to do that in a way that makes sense for them, whether that is casual conversations with a mate, whether that's a creative writing group, whether that is a structured organization of peers or all of that sort of different ways of being a peer or building community together. I do think that we need to be focused around how we protect each other from that, because it's a burden. It's epic. Um, yeah.
Thanks for that, Teddy. Yeah, I think they're really important points. And, there's a duty in some cases from an organisational context to care for people who are giving that support. And, one of the things I wanted to come back to later was talking about self-care and burnout, and the very stickiness of having to be speaking from personal experience, which is possibly traumatic, and not going into that sort of oversharing, over traumatizing,
Yep.
amplifying of pain that can so easily happen. So yeah, I think we'll come back to that in a little while. AJ, can I ask you to talk a little bit now, if that's not alarming you that I've shifted the order? I know you're super prepared because you sent me through some excellent words beforehand.
I've just worked out how to unmute myself, so I'm on track. That was really awesome, Teddy. I agree with a lot of what you say and where you're wanting to move forward to. I think it's really important. So thank you for that, Teddy. Okay, I'm AJ, and so I'm president of Transparent Australia. Transparent Australia is a non-for-profit organisation, and it focuses on two pillars. One pillar is a social support of community connection and engagement, and the second pillar is for advocacy. The last tactile real life project before COVID hit was the bathroom project that was at the Sydney Opera House, and it was for the All About Women Festival 2020. Lisa, one of our board members, and Edwina Throsby from the Sydney Opera House wanted to create a project that shined the focus on what happens in bathrooms for trans and gender diverse people, and to create a greater awareness around the positive and negative experiences that we encounter. Often, every time we need to use the bathroom, this happens. So understanding how the bathroom that everyone uses is an ongoing challenge for us, for our community, and how to navigate the toilet. Is this a safe space? Will I feel vulnerable? So TPA, we put out an invitation to the community nationally for their experiences, and people then sent in their anecdotes, and they were put onto decal and stuck onto mirrors in the Sydney Opera House bathrooms. So those people wash their hands, they could read and reflect on a trans and gender diverse person's experience. On entering the bathrooms, there were signs detailing the bathroom project and links to more experiences. I'd also like to mention that the Sydney Opera House are exploring how they can make all gender bathrooms permanent. So that was one of those advocacies that now hopefully will move forward again. So the bathroom project, which is, I know when you sent me through the email of what we're going to talk about, is a perfect example of TPA's two pillars, the advocacy and the social support connect. So talking a little bit more about our social support work, at the beginning of COVID, we created a series of digital hangouts, and we did this to keep the community connected, to foster a sense of belonging, for people to feel safe and share their day-to-day experiences. Sometimes it's laughter, sometimes it's concerns. And these have been really valuable events because they've been connecting people from outside the Sydney bubble. Many of the people who join the Hangouts are from regional and rural Australia, or people that may not have attended pre-COVID any of our physical get-togethers. So this is just like amazing. And on the digital space, we talk about trans health, makeup, dating, what's on, who's watching The Bachelor. It allows for healthy discussion and that we're there for each other. We are sharing moving forward to embrace the best paths in life, which helps everyone mentally. Just sharing of these digital spaces creates friendships and family. It's this kind of, we've got this kind of pact. On Friday nights, I host one of the online spaces, and It's kind of it's at 6 p.m., so it's kind of the end of the week bedroom slumber party. And these spaces are for people to share and to be listened to. And we have one awesome person in Newcastle who plays an instrument, or we rollerblade with them on a selfie stick to their date they are meeting. People putting on their makeup, just chatting away, and then saying, "How does that look?" And someone replying, "A little more blush." It's a safe, healthy space enabling people to be themselves. Another person is a dairy farmer in East Gippsland. We've got people in Brisbane, Batemans Bay, Nowra, the South Coast. And the other day, a lovely lady said to me on our Saturday morning Partners and Friends digital hangout, "I feel myself on these digital spaces, and this is because people on these hangouts feel safe. They know each other and can have open and honest dialogue." And I'd just like to read this email also that I got of feedback from the spaces. "I just want to send you a message to say how much the digital hangouts have meant to me during these strange times. It has given me the chance to continue socializing with good friends and also to allow me to unburden myself with any issues I have among people that don't need a long-winded explanation as to why I'm feeling a certain way. Unsure of myself at times, I think that these regular get-togethers have been very beneficial to myself and others as we look forward towards the time when we can actually go out. I think we should continue with the digital meetups as some of us have become good friends, but due to actual distance would normally not be able to get together. Among our community, there is a wealth of knowledge, information, and shared experience, and I feel that this should continue to be shared on a regular basis in the informal chats that we have been having. Love and regards, Mel." It's an amazing visual. It's like tonight. It's like seeing the Brady Bunch type screen. And you're watching people interact and the body language that perhaps you miss in tactile situations, the smiles, the good hard belly laughs, and the art of listening and deep listening. Reflecting back on the creation of these digital hangouts, TPA would not have connected with many of these people in such an intimate and ongoing way and looking out for each other prior COVID. And we would love to have more people engage with TPA. Become a financial member. Go to our website, and it's $20 a year, and it allows that oily rag to stay oiled that keeps TPA going. Connect with us on our Facebook groups. Sun, I sense Sun's got the links, and I know that they will put them in a chat for you to connect. The Facebook groups are all closed groups. There are questions pending approval. This enables us to keep the groups as safe as possible. If you're an ally, join our allies group. You're a trans and gender diverse person, join the trans and gender diverse group only. Partners of a trans and gender diverse person, there's a group for you. And because of the influx of parents that have reached out to us during COVID, we now have a parents and carers group. We're also on Twitter, Instagram, just search for Trans Pride Australia. We're always open to partnerships and collaborations with aligned organisations in making the world a better place for our community. And thank you for inviting me, Son.
Thank you very much, AJ. That's fabulous. And I'm just putting those links to the Facebook groups in chat. Anyone who'd like to ask some questions, you can start popping those in the chat as we go too. Arden, would you like to talk now?
Sure, I'll jump in. Also, by the way, AJ, it's not rollerblading; it's roller skating. we've had a lot of fun hanging out with the Trans Pride Australia crew on a Friday evening. It's been wonderful. Anyways, a bit about myself and Hunter Gender Alliance. So we're a little bit different in scope in that Hunter Gender Alliance was really founded with a focus on advancing and supporting trans people in the local Hunter region. That's quite a large area, and we ended up partnering a little bit with Hunter New South Wales Health. I've forgotten the name. Goodness. Anyway, so we're a little bit connected in with that area up through to the Hunter Valley Vineyards and up sort of that. It's quite a diverse scope of area that we sort of cover. Newcastle, where I live, I've found personally to be fairly affirming, but I'm very aware that there are other places further out within our area of influence that is certainly a more challenging place to be visibly gender diverse. So we are founded as a group of affected peoples, so health professionals, parents, and transgender diverse people came together and went, let's get together and see what we can do for the trans and gender diverse population in this area. That was the goal. And so some of that included some resources being put together for health professionals, around some resources that all GPs can access through New South Wales Health. And then more recently, we've been pushing over into holding specifically targeted events for transgender diverse people. So we hosted a big giant conference last year for a day. It was fantastic. I think Teddy came up and came along. It was a very exciting time, and we had various workshops. Some that was focusing on information for GPs and health professionals that counted to their professional experience, but it was also, hey, here's what you need to know about supporting trans people in their health journey. And then we also had things for parents and families and partners, and also other ones that were specifically targeted to trans people as well. Because we are a small regional area, the number of trans people is quite lower than it is, say, compared to Sydney. And so as a result, the way that we are able to support each other is a little bit differently. I love the words that Teddy was saying. Teddy has this funny ability of like putting into words things that like make so much more sense in my head that I've been thinking, but I didn't have the words to do. So thank you for your comments earlier tonight about peer support networks, and actually it's actually about community building. Certainly when I sort of started my way in the community, there was these sorts of formalized get-togethers where we'd get in a room and we'd sit around and we'd share our name and pronouns, and then we'd talk about trans stuff. And in some ways, it kind of felt like this Alcoholic Anonymous sort of deal. Like, hi, my name's Arden, and I've been trans for 3 years. It's not what we're here for. I think more than anything, trans people are like, the thing that I benefit the most from is from when I'm connecting to my community. Not necessarily in a formalized way, but through that informal way of meeting other people and realizing, seeing, and sharing my experience with other people, and other people sharing and learning from my experiences. I think that's how we grow as people on this road to understand ourselves better. And so that's really where we're at. With the changes that have happened with coronavirus has been quite challenging for our community here. It can be quite isolating being in a smaller town and with less of your people around, I suppose. And certainly because our focus has been previously on our local area, we've had to, with the way things have gone online, it's allowed us to sort of re-change our focus and our scope. So recently, actually last week, we launched and published our Let's Talk project. So we put together effectively it's a virtual exhibition we invited a number of people to join in and share a part of their story. We organized some workshops for younger people to get some coaching on writing their own story, and going through that process. And then we've published quite a significant number of those with their permission, of course, on our website. And so you can jump on our website and you can read through those stories if you like. The website for that is huntergenderalliance.org. So you can jump in and connect in with us there, and you can also find us on Facebook as well.
Thanks, Arden. I've just popped the Facebook link in the chat as well.
Thank you much, Lee.
I'm so looking forward to asking you all lots of questions. But Lisa, I'm going to invite you to speak next, and then I'll keep my little bit to a very little bit so that we can chat.
Yes, I haven't really prepared anything. I'm very unprepared. Yeah, I really started the group maybe about 10 years ago out of I was on a Nukana, which is HIV, Aboriginal HIV and AIDS Alliance board, and I was a sister girl rep on that board, and I wanted to do something more for my community. So, and Facebook was, you know, a new thing, and well, for me it was. And so, yeah, and I started the group, and it was a very small group, and I think maybe after about a year we had about 60 people. And we had one member in the group that was a sister girl, and she liked to share pictures of herself, and some of them were very raunchy. So someone reported the group, and then so after about a year of getting all these people together, Facebook back in them days closed our group down, so we had to start again. And I think it's been a real learning curve for me. You know, it's something Teddy touched on about, you know, who's looking after the people that are, you know, admitting these groups, and, you know, where do we go for our support and stuff. You know, I think in them very early days of starting up a group like this, I just wasn't prepared for some of the battles and stuff that I had to face, you know, and criticism, and yeah, and I also wasn't prepared for, you know, the growth and how fabulous and how rewarding it was as well. You know, it was just, it had so many positives, you know, but there were negatives in it, and there still are. But yeah, and we've grown to, you know, 2,000 people now, and I think what a lot of people see is not what goes on in the group. You know, a lot of people see nice posts and, you know, blah blah blah, but there's always people wanting information or referrals. So I'm forever networking with other people like Trans Pride Australia, and sending people off to, you know, to join that group because maybe they're not getting their needs met in our group for a certain area, you know, or off to surgery, you know, groups that talk about surgery and other things, or HRT, because in our group we mainly focus on, you know, community stuff and community events. So yeah, and also building a team of other admins, so that I'm not doing it all, and so it's all not me, and that there's diversity within there as well. You know, I come from a very urban community, and my upbringing was very different to someone, say, who is in Northern Territory, we're made up of, you know, some of our admins are cisgendered partners of Aboriginal trans people, and so lots of diversity within the group as well. Try and have a brother boy, you know, we try and have brother boys in there as well. Sorry, I've gone blank.
That's okay. I was
Yeah, we've got a pin post.
I'm always the one that cuts off.
We've got a pin post at the top of our group, and it's made up of, it's put together by Andy, and he's a fabulous Aboriginal person, and he's put together lots of archives of clips of brother boys and sister girls, and, you know, you can go in there and search within that as well. So we keep that as our pin post because it's just got a wealth of information in there, and you can specifically search for what you're looking for. So that's really valuable in the group as well. We've also, you know, we've done the whole conference, where we'd go to conferences and share what we were doing, and a few of us got together at one stage and made a clip called Brother Boys Yarning Up, where I don't have a thing to that. So we made that, and it was lots of fun, and I think it really helped lots of people as well, and it helped us just be able to do something that was, cost us next to nothing. It was just a weekend of us getting together and putting together this clip, and one of us had editing skills and edited it all and made it all look right, and yeah, and that's been a valuable resource to be able to share with other people. Oh, thanks, Teddy, for sharing. I think he just shared.
Oh, good job. I was actually just going to ask your permission, Lisa, if I could. I found a beautiful article called Sister Girls and Brother Boys Unite to Strengthen Spirits from an ABC News article back in 2016. Is it okay if I share that with
Absolutely, yeah. I'm not. I don't remember it, but yeah.
You're in it. It's really lovely. Yeah. So I'd like to
Yeah.
come and circle back. We had some great conversation on the phone just around strategies for dealing with lateral hostility and conflict within groups as well, and again how to maintain some kind of momentum in being able to do that over and over again through various flashpoints, and so looking after yourself. So I'll circle back to that as a topic for us all to speak to in just a moment. But had you finished talking about the?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I'll just take a little moment to share a little bit about what's going on in Victoria at the moment beyond COVID. I'm part of the peer support program that was started back in, I guess its roots came out of a paper that was done for the Department of Health Services in 2014, which then led to the establishment of the Equality Branch in Victoria in 2015, and of course the appointment of our fabulous Ro Allen. It really makes a massive difference, I think, to have government support for grassroots initiatives and to have support flow through to TGV and to trans-led organisations. And of course, I'm also working within Thorn Harbour Health, which is an LGBTQI plus organisation. So, the distinctions between working in those spaces and then being part of the kind of grassroots community that are trying to support one another through different strategies is something that I'm very much attuned to. There were a number of things, I guess, that happened in the national landscape between the establishment of the Equality Branch. We had marriage equality, we had the Trans Pathways Survey, we had, suddenly a really large amount of evidence about the impact on TGD folk of this kind of public discourse that was othering and really harmful and horrible. And I've got some stats here around, I think out of that Trans Pathway Survey, there were 80% had self-harmed and 48% had attempted suicide at some point in their life, and that was 14 to 25-year-olds. So it's pretty harrowing kind of evidence for need of peer support, which was then funded as part of three armed program, which included one arm led by Thorn Harbour, training GPs and social service providers around better care and understanding of TGD folk. Another arm was setting up a couple of new trans-led health centres, which are based at Ballarat and Preston, Your Community Health. So there are peer navigators in those spaces now. If you're first wanting to kind of make those appointments with endocrinologists or specialists, there's somebody who's had that experience to walk by your side and help you through it. And then the third portion of that is the one that I'm involved in, which is $1 million towards peer support, which sounds like an enormous amount of money. And we had a fabulous trans gathering in March last year, where there were 70 people from the TGD community from across the state. coming together to think about how they best needed to advise and shape how that money would be spent. And so out of that, I got a 0.4 position, and I work with a lovely colleague, Oliver Ross, and we're soon to be in a position where we're going to be advertising some more positions to really kind of try and work out how to celebrate what's already happening and that sometimes slips through the cracks, and to reinforce that in ways that make it sustainable, so that, you know, when the money's gone and we've got a change of government or the next enemy of our cause in power, we are better able and better resourced to support one another. And so a lot of the programs that we're looking at, there's a Spark initiative, which you can have a look at. One of my moderators, I'm sure, will put the TGV links in the chat, which is basically little pots of financial support and a training program that can help activate kinship networks, we've called them, spaces where people can do creative activities or do sports or do org-based social support networks, to try and tease out the elements of peer support that are able to share across groups, so that the idea is, you know, that one person might apply, but they will pass on their skills through mentorship and sharing of experiences, so that when they're tired, somebody else can come through and take on the group and continue its running. So we're really just, I guess, you know, we're well into the program, but we're also, you know, poised to benefit, I guess, from COVID in many ways, in that the fact that we've had to go into online circumstances has caused everybody to adapt how they're thinking about their programs and the kind of ways that they can conquer the technology or embrace all of the different strands of technology to really kind of connect beyond those traditional access points, which were very much dependent upon people being able to get on a bus or get in a taxi and get to a physical venue. So there are great opportunities in those things, and that's the big silver lining. So I'm not going to go too much more on about that. I would like to ask our panelists all a question, and maybe if you just wave if you've got a quick response that you'd like to add, and then we'll circle all around. So these are some of the kind of provocations of what happens if within these peer support spaces we have people who are giving bad advice, or who are you know, adding to drama and potentially bringing in too much of themselves into what is supposed to be a kind of equitable relationship. How can we manage people who have good intentions but are perhaps not at a stage where they're able to really speak with great wisdom? I can see Teddy's already unmuted himself.
Only because I want to always be ready, but I think AJ, Arden, or Lisa are much better to go for this one. I'm happy to say something at the end.
I think AJ and Lisa are best placed to answer this one.
Thanks.
You've been dubbed in.
Okay, I think one of the I think it breaks down into a couple of areas. I think when people want to, and I know this myself and those who know me, when I want to get something off my chest, I just go blah 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 blah, and a lot of people go blah 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 blah, and it's only in reflection when you read back and you think, actually, what was it really? What was I trying to say? And so using, I'm not sure about yourself, Lisa, with your group, but we have rules, and they're kind of when somebody joins a group. I wait until there's a few, and then I put up a little GIF, and I say, "Can I please remind all new members to read the history and to read the rules?" And even though it's kind of gatekeeping, what it does is it's saying, just treat everybody with respect, how you would like to to be treated yourselves, and reminding people that sometimes we get into a habit of putting people down or humiliating and not realizing we're actually doing it. And so it's just making people aware of, healthy debate's really good. And one of those situations that I think is really important, that I've noticed, is that you have people that have all different experiences at all different times, and you have to respect the past, the present, and the future. And it may not be your experience, but it is that person's experience and it is valid. And getting people to know that it's not black or just it's not a right or wrong. It's kind of okay. I know that in my life that there's many times where I've thought I would never do that, but now I do that. So I've not given myself room to move and mature and to learn and understand. And so I think having difficult conversations is really important. And I think that way with the Facebook groups, I know it's a lot of work. And when you get the text at 1, 2 in the morning and people are going bum, 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 and all the personal slander that comes at you, you just start filtering and you work out what the basic, where did that come from? And a lot of it is somebody just wants to be heard. And then you go, well, what if this? What if that? So that would be my...
Thanks, AJ. That's lovely. I think, yeah, acknowledging that a lot of us, that there's no kind of one place of being trans, is it? So there's the trauma of coming out might be quite new, it might be quite old. Questions of race and other intersections are also inform the way we are able to be with one another. And when you're able to kind of qualify, somebody's rage as going, it just is, and I don't have to let it stick to me, then there's a sense of being able to kind of let it slide away, I guess. But also that it's not forever, that we've all come through these ups and downs, and so sticking with...
I think the one thing that we all have in common is that we have experienced some sort of trauma or uncomfortableness, and that point there is where then it's kind of, okay, how can we grow? How can we heal?
Lisa, I feel like you might have some more things to add to this discussion. Can I invite you back in?
Not really. I think, one of the big ones that is a trigger in our group sometimes is, who's transgender, or who's a real sister girl. And I mean, that can just create such an explosion, and it can really get out of hand with that one. And I tend to let it just, if it's just a discussion and going along and there's not, it's not getting too out of hand, I tend to let it go as long as it can, and maybe support people privately with a private message rather than putting it up on the screen, and and try and keep that sort of moderated where I'm not taking sides, and I'm not agreeing with someone or disagreeing with someone. So I really try and keep that as much as I can without losing my own integrity, and just just try and calm it all down, and get people, and usually it blows over. Most of the time it just blows over if you manage it like that. But in the early days I was learning, so I sometimes wouldn't deal with it the right way, and so it would end up an explosion, and I probably made things worse in a lot of ways in the early days. And I suppose it's taught me how to be a better communicator over the years as well. I hope
Yeah, I think
answered the
the
question.
spaces where there's black and white definitions that are being discussed, that's where the trans enough or the who is non-binary and what is agender and I mean, they're often really interesting discussions, but when they're also heightened with I guess, emotion. And I think, if you've fought really hard to be yourself and you call yourself a particular identity, it's hard to hear that somebody else is doing it a different way and, getting away with it. Like, why should they get away with it when I had to fight? So I think some of those hostilities towards one another are probably inevitable. Um, and I love your approach of not taking sides, of doing private messaging of support, so that you're not kind of amplifying a conflict in a visible space, and reflecting on your own growth through those periods of time where perhaps there were times in our past where we were more rigid in our understandings of identity. Yeah, it's really, really lovely to hear those strategies. Thank you.
I think the context can be really helpful. When you put, am I on? Yeah, I am on.
Yes, you are.
Like once we put these discussions into context, when you have people who are can be really intense and a little bit overbearing about their trauma, I think a lot of the time people are coming to this conversation from a good place. The person who's going, don't do this and don't do this and don't do this because I had a bad experience. They're reacting in this way because they don't want other people to have the same trauma that they did. Even though they may not be doing it in the most constructive and helpful way, their intention is still pure. And so when we are able to contextualize that conversation, and when we are able to then talk about, well, there is no one right way to be trans. And so therefore there is no correct way of going about this journey. And there's no correct way to be who you are, except for you have to be the way that you know yourself to be. And once we contextualize that, then these conversations can change, and it's not actually, this is not a personal attack on you and your experience. This is me going, this is my experience, and this is how I got from point A to point B. And if I can use that experience from my point A to point B to help you on your point A to point B, then great. But then also, we need to continually acknowledge and affirm this idea that there is no one right way to be you except for what you know to be best.
So, Arden, in terms of timing of that kind of contextualization, is that something that you would, let something run for a little while and then kind of gently weigh in, or have you found that there have been times when you've actually needed to step in and shut down something that's, you can see is actively causing hurt?
So I found myself in this situation not in online forums, but in real life places and real life hangouts, and that is an exceptionally challenging time in a public place, and someone's off on their spiel. And so then sometimes you just sort of jump in and add your little 2 cents, and someone needs, because they need to feel like they've been heard. Really, that's what they want, is they want to know that they've been heard. And so you can let them have that space to a point, and then at some point you need to temper that with, that was your experience, but that may not be this. Here, let me temper that with, compare it to my experience, and we can tone it down and cool that conversation down.
Yeah, I think we talked about code of conducts before and kind of group values, and I think I've often seen that you speak from the I and don't assume that that's the same for everybody else. I think that can
Absolutely
gently qualify the specifics. Lisa?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I know the lady from Newcastle, sorry I forgot her name, was saying before, like it's a bit like like a support group. in the, you're in like a bit of an AA meeting. Well, I
Alcoholics
think,
Anonymous, yeah.
yeah, it is a little bit like that. And I see, it's like a therapeutic community where, one addict's helping another. And I see that so much in Sister Girls and Brother Boys, where someone will post something and the love and support that they get it just, every time I see it, it just blows me away. And one person connecting with another, that they could live in the same suburb and not even know, and then they're connected in the group, and then suddenly they've got, their community's gotten bigger and their support networks got bigger. It's such a sort of, I think our groups that, I know for me, Sister Girls and Brother Boys is, one of the most important groups for our community. It's somewhere where we can go, and we don't have anywhere else really on a national level where we can go, and they're so valuable. Spaces like Trans Pride Australia and Trans Hub.
Just on that AA thing, I think the big difference between what we do here in our community building and what happens in that AA meeting is that an AA meeting is somewhere where you go where you have a problem that needs to be solved, that needs to be fixed, and we don't need to be fixed.
Hallelujah.
22 years clean and sober.
Well, good for you. That's a whole different kettle of fish, isn't it, though?
Can I ask, actually, for those of you who do make distinctions in your spaces between a therapeutic focus group or support group and peer support, where do you draw that line between something that is not peer support because a professional therapist might need to be present, or what are your experiences around that?
I'll jump in here. Quite frankly, the size of the community and the resources we have available to us in this local area, we do not have the capability to run consistent formal group stuff like the How to Be Trans 101 get together and we talk about how to do the thing. It can't. There's no sort of economy in that, because you may have maybe one new baby fresh trans who needs that information, and so you run it, and then the other people who are coming who don't need that information and they don't need that support, but they're just there because they want to do the thing for the community, which can be really helpful, but it can be often unfulfilling, because really what people want is a place to hang out and be seen for who they are. And so that's really where our focus has gone in the last 12 months.
I'd also like to point out, as well as running one of these groups, I've been doing it for nearly 5 years, 7 days a week, and I do it where I can. I did have a job, and so there is no funding. So if I stop, succession planning is so important, but who wants to commit? So it's having lots of little people doing little bits, but to find somebody that it takes up, yourself, Teddy, and you're in a paid role, and you, how much voluntary work you put in it as well, and yourself, Arden, and Lisa, I mean, it's finding other gold nuggets that can keep going. Or we need some help to go. We need somebody paid 1 or 2 days a week to keep this running. The importance of it is so, it's just invaluable, but people don't realize, it's just not there on their sort of budgeting or whatever. So.
Even if you was a 2 day a week job, AJ, it'd still be a 24/7 gig, even if you did pay it 2 days.
But Arden, at least I would know at the back of my mind that I could let go and just
Absolutely.
feel that there's somebody else. Like, I'm lucky, I've got a couple of moderators on at the moment, and I can't tell you, it's just amazing to wake up in the morning and not have 21
Hmm.
messages going.
Mm.
And you know, I'm privileged to have them.
As good as it is, the internet never sleeps.
I think that that's a really, really powerful point to make, though, that the foundation of our community building is our own labour. And it's
Mm.
something that we benefit from, but that takes an incredible amount from us. Um, yeah. And so I wondered if I could make a couple of points
Sure.
because this is such an interesting and powerful conversation. And I wanted to just also bring it to, when we think about peers, for me, my mind often goes to people who are starting to affirm their gender, who are needing information. But actually, I think that some of the most powerful moments are for people who are community leaders and who are advocates. And there's an interesting kind of environment for advocates in the way that we engage around each other and the support that we are able to offer each other and the relationships that we have with each other that can be, um, you know, I often think that, people talk about lateral hostility, and I really get that. And I only blame cis people for that. The way that we are treated, the way that the medical community considers us, and the way that the broader society wants to consider the trans experience means that at the very core of who we are, we're told that we're not okay. And that happens from the moment that we disclose who we are. For me, when I came to know my own transness, say 15 or so years ago, I was the only trans person that I knew. And it makes sense then that that's the experience for lots of people in our community. And we have to figure it out ourselves. And that was one of the real drivers for developing TransHub, I have to say, to the level that we did do it. Because I could truly spend all day answering people's questions on Facebook or correcting people's incorrect responses. And it's because cis people give us wrong information and they're in positions of authority. So we think they're right. And most of the time, they're fucking wrong. And oh, I just realized it was being recorded and I'm swearing. It didn't take long. But I'm always curious about, thank you, Taylor. You give me one of those and I will respond right back. I know you want to swear, I can see it. Um, the, uh, how we align our advocacy with other advocates who we don't necessarily agree with or who we don't like or who we're upset by something that they did 5 years ago or we saw them and we didn't like them, or whatever happened. I didn't like the way that you said that, and now I can't work with you. And we find ourselves in a situation right now where, and I have to say this with incredible love and honesty, we've run out of time for that. We've truly run out of time for a moment when we're all going to get on together enough to make a difference. Because trans people in Australia are one of the most disadvantaged, marginalised communities across the whole country. I believe, um, and on and in and as engaged as I am in the literature, the most marginalised person I believe on the planet would be a sister girl, and we must prioritise and focus on elevating and building the voices that aren't heard enough. There are not very many advocates who are working at, I have one of the very, very, very few paid positions, having volunteered my time relentlessly for 15 years. And the amount of volunteer work that I do on top of the stuff that I do for work, the job at ACON that I have, is remarkable. And the hours that we all put in, we do so because our community's health is in crisis. So, of course, we would. But how do we look after each other in that? And
Yeah.
how do we stay together? Because the interpersonal conflict, or the I didn't like the way that you said that, or I didn't like that you were invited to that thing, or I don't really like you because I had a, because of something. Um, that's not us. That's cis people who are challenging us to fight with each other, and we just can't do that anymore. I wanted to also acknowledge that there are some really powerful and uh, uh, advocates who have been around for a very long time and who are in this grid. And I just wanted to acknowledge you, and I can see you for the people that I can see, Melody, Kathy, and many others who have been around for a very long time doing the work that needs to be done in the way that they, in the way that works best for them. And as a community, um, how do we keep that momentum going in a way where we can feel safe, supported, and affirmed with a 2020 understanding of the trans experience, with a focus on trans liberation, so that we can all kind of move on together. And I have to say, I've spent all day at the family court with a case that is happening at the moment that is worrying. But I was joined by an incredible group of cis people and trans people allies, cis allies and trans people, all together in a solidarity to support this case that I cannot tell you anything about because it's been suppressed. Thank you. But there is movement happening, and community building is at the core of it. I really do believe must be at the core of it.
Yeah, I think you've all kind of referred to a certain circularity in the nature of peer support, in that there's always new folk coming in that are raw and working out boundaries and definitions of identity and trying to kind of make meaning of how it all works, and that circularity, the inevitability of that is um, I guess what makes it hard in some ways to keep doing it. Um, I think you spoke, AJ, about, or a number of you have spoken about having some kind of core FAQ kind of information pinned in online spaces and redirecting people through to, there are so many sources now online that are full of good information, so that kind of alleviates some of that need to personally be in every conversation. Um, I wonder if there's any more, we've spoken about sharing the load, having other people working with us as admins or allies, and really, building trust with them so that your own energy can be sustainable. Are there any other strategies that you've drawn on that
My
can
thought
allow you to keep going, both on a personal and a org kind of level?
my thought as well is with allies or in collaboration with other organisations that we actually understand what the definition of grassroots is. Because often grassroots is quite decadent. And so for some reason, they don't actually get what grassroots is. Um, and
How do you mean decadent,
It's
AJ?
a
That's
cute little
fascinating.
buzzword that gets used by organizations sometimes.
we, if there's funding, we don't have DG1 status. So, so if an organisation is going to give funding to a grassroots, you have to have DG1. But if you're grassroots, you've not got DG1 because we're all volunteers rattling around. So it's kind of you're caught between this, and we need something else there. I don't know, fixing so that we can. I don't know. Otherwise, we're always going to be scuttling underneath, scuttling underneath. It's very true what Teddy said. It's hard to get your head around that all decisions that are made for us have come down not from our community. They're not our best interest. They're what other people think are our best interest.
We've got a lovely comment in the chat from Melody Moore too, talking about, you know, we wish we could invite people to walk a mile in my shoes to understand experience, but quite often the lateral hostility and the abuse comes from people holding on to experiences and identities that they don't want to see devalued. We had an earlier question too around when we were talking about cis folk as being the perpetrators of lateral violence, and I guess I struggle a little bit with that, Teddy, in that it's not wholly, it might be lateral in terms of power, but there's such a different speaking position that it's
Let me
always.
explain what I mean.
Beg your pardon?
Let me explain what I mean, because I didn't quite mean that.
Okay.
The way
So I'll just actually frame it around the question, because then you can maybe address that too. How do you get through to people who are just not getting it, and the person's asking about cis folk without having to share stories? Like, what are the other strategies for getting through without having to kind of tear yourself apart every time? That might have taken you off on a tangent, but please go with
no, it was
clarify.
great, although I feel like I missed a little bit of you. And how much time do we have left, though, just to
We
confirm?
are on 7:22, and yeah, we are going to wrap at 7:30. So we're
Okay,
heading
I'll be
towards.
quick.
Let's talk about positive strategies for supporting one another across borders.
Mm. My sense of the role that cis sexism has to play is that um, it impacts us, I think, so deeply that the way that we treat each other then is impacted. That's what I mean.
Yeah, got you. Yeah.
Cool. And one of the things that I think is really powerful is using LGBTQ organisations that have a T in their acronym. Because AJ's absolutely right. Grassroots community groups and organisations can't attract funding, but organisations like ACON can auspice that funding for you.
Mhm.
And I am very keen for more of that, that's for sure. Collaboration and partnership and pressure and accountability and transparency. I work for the biggest LGBTQ organisation in Australia. ACON is big. We're big. It's massive. But my role is one person, and I have a 2-day-a-week person, and it's funded through ACON's own fundraised monies, because we recognised that doing this work was really critical after we developed our blueprint. But part of my role is about trying to find funding, trying to actually pay for my salary, really. And there's no, New South Wales is an incredibly conservative government, and that's really tricky. But I can leverage off the resources of ACON, and we should be doing that in our states, in the states that we're in, to make sure that if an organisation has a T in their name, that it's not silent. And they want to be doing this work because they've got relationships that are really critical in the advocacy, particularly with the health departments. And we can leverage off that, I believe. I am, and it's working, I think. I love you too, AJ. Oh, that was a private message. Sorry.
Can I just say one thing from an elder's point of view?
Oh, hello, Kathy.
I I try, and I recognise time is very, very short. About 5 years ago, maybe it was a bit longer, I tried to get trans organisations together. We need a national trans body that is specifically trans. Now, that isn't to say that we walk away from our strong partnership within the Rainbow. But until we get an ability to build a national trans recognition, I think we're always going to be in real strife. If we had a national body, then we could potentially get bequests. Then we could potentially move to another stage altogether. So all in the Rainbow, but we need a national trans body. And I'll be quiet now because it's been a great discussion.
Thanks, Kathy. Thanks. I didn't realise you could unmute yourself in video, so you look at that. Now you've opened the can of worms. We are at 7:25, so I'd love to just do a quick whip around with our panellists. And what would be your top strategy for for supporting the orgs that, or the, we've been talking about the decadence of grassroots, the supporting the spaces that don't have the resources or the longevity that each of you have attained. Lisa, what can you do to support other groups, and what do you need to be supported?
I'd like to see, Teddy was just talking about money and, how he, Acorn's got all this dosh. Wouldn't it be great if we had a space where, we could have a get together where we, help to upskill people that are managing these spaces and, and connect and come together and, and work in a therapeutic way. I think
training and connection as top goals. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and like training the train. Is that how you say it? Or just upskilling.
Yeah. Okay. So training the people within
people. Yeah. Strategies and yeah. And
a part of the pillars of the peer support program in Victoria are around feeling safe, connected, and ready to lead. So that ready to lead, I think, is really bringing up everybody so that they can actually be in positions where they can have some power in their communities.
And can I just give a big shout out to Ro Allen, who put on the Girl and Brother Boy get together called Kunga Retreat, and I was part of the organising committee, and it was fantastic. And the ongoing flow and effect from that get together in our community has been incredible. The support networks that created, and one person helping another after they connected at that retreat was incredible, and I'd love to see more of that.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, we're very lucky to have Ro.
Can I just mention something else before we go to everybody? One of the things that I would really like to see happening is that when our organised, I know with TPA, but we're often being asked for people to speak on panels by major organisations. Can we get
us?
I think this is why a national body is really important, so that we can set.
Yes.
Nobody, and everybody's given a basic so they know what's okay, and debriefing so that they're safe. And we have something like a speakers bureau.
Yeah, great call.
Network of people who can do the thing.
Adam.
I'm going to keep it short because time is short, and AJ wanted me to sing a song. So, goes like this. We're all in this together. Anyways, that's what I have to say.
That's very gorgeous. Very gorgeous. So,
Teddy, did Teddy want to say something on this?
By having one another's backs.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're all in the same boat together. What helps some of us helps all of us.
Can we all do a high five? We're all in this together.
Sanitary 5.
Come on, everybody. High five. Show me your hands. That's it.
I am
hands, Teddy.
I am acutely aware as a trans person who is fairly freshly baked that I stand on the shoulders of giants who have done bloody hard work to get us to where we are now. And that impact will never be lost on me.
Beautiful.
It's a privilege now for me to be able to continue that work to make it easier for that next generation. Just this week, I've made a connection with someone who is starting that journey and had zero connections. Didn't know anyone, didn't know anywhere. But that work that benefits one of us benefits all of us.
Yeah.
I actually feel like that's a perfect
Thanks
time
for
to end.
that.
Oh, thank you.
I don't need to say anything else other than that. You're amazing.
You're amazing, Teddy. We love you.
if any of you in the audience or any of the panelists have resources that they'd like to share, please email me. I'll capture all the chat. I'm son.vivian@thornharbourhealth.org. Maybe a .org. And I will actually email those out to all of the participants tonight. So it's been fabulous having an audience who looks like they've mostly enjoyed the discussion. We haven't had any complaints in the chat, so that's good. It's been very lovely to, I guess, think through some of the nuances of why it's hard and how we can keep going when we have no choice. We need to keep carrying it forward. And thanks to the many elders in the audience who've allowed us to be in this position of being able to host a conversation in a national space. There you go. We've got a message from Simona Castricum in the chat that's about a speakers bureau too. Marion's list from Parla. So it's been absolutely lovely to see your faces and to hear your voices and to benefit from your wisdom. We're going to be doing more of the transcript series, and I look forward to inviting lots more people and attending some of the ones that are happening. I know Teddy's got some lined up, and I'm sure that
With AJ.
Yeah, share our public events as much as we can, because the benefits of being online, I guess, is that we can, be across those national boundaries.
Yeah.
I will invite you all. I always find it terribly anticlimactic at the end of these things because they're all, there's so much goodwill. Can I invite you all to go and spend a couple of minutes in the comfort of your homes, just reflecting on the amazing ways we are able to support one another and be there for one another, and the fact that we are actually all still here. So I think that's
Son, you're amazing. Thank you so much for coordinating this. Really, you don't take enough credit. You are an amazing person. We just want to do this to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for putting yourself out there. It's really powerful and very important.
Thank you.
Much love.
Thank you to all
Thanks,
of you.
Son.
All right, now I'm going to do the logistics of working out and make sure that it's all recorded so that we can chop these up and have them available online for the people who weren't able to be here tonight. So
just cut out my swear word if that's all right.
Go and have
we'll
some.
Just bleep it out.
Thank you.
All right, thank you everybody. Have a lovely dinner and a lovely restorative evening.
Thank you very much. You take care, everybody. Let's all go and wash our hands.
I live alone. What are you talking about?
I am also alone. But...
I've got to go to another meeting. What am I talking about?
Excited to see you sticking around. I can see that it's Melody Moore and Kathy Mansfield already. Hi, Monique.
I'm just going to make sure that I've captured all of this chat too.
I'm still trying to capture it here.
Oh, actually, I don't think you're able to as a participant.
No.
It was one of the settings that I had to play with earlier.
So could you please email that to like these details to me, please?
And, I'll email all the email addresses.
I actually had a lot to say in this meeting, but obviously I wasn't given a chance. So
I'm sorry about that, Melody. I actually didn't realise till the end that you could just actually unmute yourself and be on. And the tricky thing is to work out how to devote time to everybody. So can I invite you to come along to another one of these?
Sure.
Seminars?
You've got my email address details there, Vivian. So please.
I do.
Get in touch with me and. Keep me posted. I'll definitely be interested in being involved. And thanks again, Teddy. You certainly reiterate a lot of points that I've made. Same with Kathy on the need for a national organisation.
Absolutely.
I mean, like you and I personally, we've been here probably longer than most people, and it's great to sort of see in this this meeting that a lot of community leaders out there starting to appreciate a lot of the difficulties and struggles that I've had for so many years. But it's great to see such a focus on our health and well-being, advocacy and peer support. How do we frame that? How do we build a stronger and a bigger community and have a much stronger voice? So these are the things that have always really been at the center of my heart right from the beginning. So,
Melody, can I, and Kathy and anyone else who's still here is interested, there's a sort of growing movement of that's bringing together all of the advocates, like senior advocates doing the like hectic work, bringing together in a new kind of digital environment called Basecamp. We have nearly 70 members so far, and it's, you know, I'm a member, Sun's a member, Brenda's a member, many others, and I haven't done a broad call out, just because it's very slowly building, but I would really, really love you, both of you, all of you, to be a member.
sure.
If you would like to. So it's bringing advocates together outside of Facebook, outside of social media, in a secure environment where we can connect together, share information, ask questions, and in the absence of a national organisation, which, given the current environment in terms of our federal parliament, that's going to be very, very difficult. But if we can continue the mobilisation to keep connected, and put, you know, this group is quite positive, and we're trying to share information, and you know, it's sort of growing slowly. There hasn't been any bust ups so far. I know there was one. It was a cis guy. He flounced, and that was it. Fine. Actually, no, that's not true. I had a meeting with him and a video call with him to say, you don't leave. You're not allowed to leave.